Hello world and all who inhabit it, and welcome to Orpheus Games. I'm Jake, I'm 15, and I'm super excited to rank my top 5 campaign and legacy games I've played in this list today, which I'm sure you know about since you clicked on this video, and I'm super excited to welcome you. This is my first time doing a list or ranking or anything, so a comment for what you think I could improve on or do better, or what you liked in the video would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So without further ado, for each entry, I'm going to tell you how many players I played it at, how much I've completed, who makes it, and what I've enjoyed and not enjoyed about it. The number one game here is also my favorite game of all time, and I really enjoy all of these, and I wouldn't really want to miss much of them from my collection. And it's a mix of legacy and campaign games, and most of them I've played at 1 or 2 players. Which is very accessible and easy for that count, since I always find that player count I have much more easy access to be able to play. Except for this last one, which in 5th place, from Avalon Hill, we have my 5th favorite campaign or legacy game of all time is Betrayal Legacy. Betrayal Legacy is adapted, it's sort of like Risk Legacy. It's adapted from an already pre-existing game, which is Betrayal at the House on the Hill, and adapted into a legacy format where you're going to be playing cards, changing stats, and exploring a haunted mansion-esque sort of thing while you're trying to uncover the haunt and eventually not be defeated and win the game if you are either the traitor or one of the normal people, one of the survivors. So how it works is at the start of the game, you're going to each pick a character, and you're going to have the same house through each game. Each game is like a generation later. So one game you'll have like you'll have a character, and the next generation is their kid, and the next generation is their grandkid, and so on. And you'll have the same house every game. Then you'll choose a miniature, and the color will match your actual color that you have for each time, and then you're going to put them on the board, and each turn you're going to be moving around, exploring different rooms, collecting items, and preparing for what will happen, which will be triggered. It's known as the haunt. When that happens, you're going to open the book, flip to an area, read what it says, and that's going to dictate the rules and what's going to happen the rest of the scenario. It's also going to say who is the traitor based on items or where they are or what they've done in the past or their attributes. And then they're going to be competing to complete their individual goal before everyone else and the survivors are trying to stop them. So it starts off, it's this really interesting dynamic since it's not fully cooperative, but it's not fully competitive either. Because if you don't help each other at all, you're not going to get anything. But if you are helping each other too much, then when the traitor is revealed, they're going to be much more powerful than everyone else, and it's going to be more difficult. So splitting up also is not always the best idea, because what if you end up one-on-one with the traitor and they're able to defeat you or hurt you or escape with their goal more easier, but if you stay together, then you're covering a lot less ground and discovering not as much rooms. Because that's another cool thing. Each room has a new special ability, which is really fun to activate and play around with all your different actions. So, pros of the game. It's a very interesting dynamic. I really enjoy that. Each room has new exciting things to discover. Other things I enjoyed, it's very unexpected. Each session feels not very different, but different. Each session with the different haunts and the different rules they dictate, it's always fun exploring what it is or what's going to happen. Especially the first one, it really sets the tone for everything, which I'm not going to spoil, but there's a great twist in that, and it really helped you understand what Betrayal Legacy is going to be. Some of the cons for that, another pro is the unlocking progress is very fun, as in all legacy and campaign games, but this one especially is legacy, and also at the end you're supposedly able to continue to play it, which I'm excited about. And the stickers you're applying or changes you're making to your house, and some items in fact you're going to be permanently changing. Like I discovered these eyeglasses, and now in all future scenarios whoever in my house knows about these eyeglasses, so gets an extra special benefit from that, which I really enjoy. It adds to the legacy feel. But something that detracts from that is sometimes your characters die and then you're a new character each time, so it doesn't feel as connected across each scenario. But I do like how each house has slightly different attributes and ideas from the beginning of how they're going to act. And then some of the cons, the component quality is not great in the game. Some of the tiles are a little flimsy and the miniatures are all right. They're not super detailed, but they are painted, which is nice. It's a pretty solid game, and it's my number 5 campaign or legacy game of all time, Betrayal Legacy. In 4th place, my 4th favorite campaign or legacy game at all time, which is most people's number 1 and number 2 of all time on Board Game Geek. Yes, that's Pandemic Legacy Season 1 from Z-Man Games. I know most people rank this a lot higher than I do, and I think that might be because I played it like a year and a few months ago, while others of these I've played more recently, except for Betrayal Legacy. That was the longest ago. It was pre-COVID, and then my group couldn't get together as much, so then my brother and I just started playing the games individually. But Pandemic Legacy was very interesting. It was so unexpected and super fun. It was a wild ride. I'd never played Pandemic before, and it was very interesting having, you have these cubes out, and then each turn as your characters, it's a cooperative game. You're going to be moving around trying to stop the spread of the diseases, because each time you add a disease cube to a city, it's fine until it gets a fourth where it outbreaks, and then it adds one to every city around it. But then that can continue to cause a chain reaction, because then those cities might outbreak and so forth, so it can get really chaotic really quickly. But the thing that I adore the most about Pandemic Legacy is how amazingly it's changed each scenario. Each time the new rules are added are super fun, and they're not that difficult, but it's changing things, you're naming things. It's always super fun with what's going on throughout. And you never feel like it's like that much of a problem. Like it does feel significant, like that you're fighting a disease, but it never feels like it's a disease. It could be like anything, which is why it's been adapted in season 0, the prequel game, to be Soviet agents. But I think it's cool, and I still get the theme. The characters, you get kind of attached to them. You can play as any character you want, but then you'll discover new ones and you'll name them, and then you'll write their track record. But if ever they're exposed too many times to different things, then they could die, and that's so bad when characters die, and it's really sad. But it doesn't happen that often. I really enjoy that because of it, since it can feel tense and high stakes. Other pros of the game, it's very interesting thinking out your turn and what actions you're going to take. And it doesn't grow stale, especially with legacy games. I've noticed that a lot, but this one especially, because of the new rules that are added and the new challenges and the new difficulty. Like, the difficulty escalates as you're going throughout the game in different months, and you can still feel that when you're playing as the different characters and the changes that are being implemented and the choices you have to make, so you never get too good at the game where you're better than the game is at beating you, which I also think is good. Other pros of the game, it's really fun when you like open the box and there's like all these mystery boxes and these secret envelopes which contain like things you can pull back to see different things. That's super fun, and it's really enjoyable peeling out, open the box, or taking off the sticker or applying it. That's another positive thing throughout legacy games. However, there is only one more legacy game and 2 campaign games left on my list. And then the component quality is not the most fantastic. But it serves its purpose, and the cubes and the minis are all right for what they are. Oh, I can't say there's minis in the game. You're not supposed to know that, so spoiler. But it's not that big of a deal. And the player pawns are nice. It's like standard Pandemic, but the board is bigger and there's more cards going out. It's fine quality. It's standard, similar to Betrayal Legacy. Nothing outstanding. That was my 4th favorite campaign or legacy game of all time, which I played at 2 players throughout the entire time. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. My number 3 game is the first campaign game on this list. So campaign games are different from Legacy, where you don't permanently alter the board. You make changes and you still have the story and everything throughout the game, but you're never making a permanent addition or change to the game. You can always play it again. My number 3 game is from Awaken Realms. It's a dream-based, super enjoyable. You're going through these different dreams to explore and have different missions with your characters, and there's lots of deck building. It's Ether Fields. Ether Fields is one of the most controversial games that some people love or some people hate, and I find myself more on the love side. I have not finished Ether Fields. I think I'm like halfway through. Then I got to a point where there was like a rules this thing, and I have to like figure that out. But I really want to jump back into it. I was playing this solo as one of the characters. So how it works is you're in a dream the whole time. The point is you're having these different dreams, different things, and you're trying to like piece together a story, sort of. Like, there's no clear arc of what's happening, or like, I'm a disease fighter and I have to fight these diseases, or we have to stop the person who's trying to like possess us all or something. It's not like that. There's like little bits of information throughout, and like you really like craft what you think is happening. Like it's not really a very story-based game. It's more like, well, it is, but like it's not very direct in how it's telling you or what's going on. It's you sort of have to piece that together yourself. And you have this one part where you're in the dreams and you're moving around, and each dream feels very different. You're playing cards from your hand to take different actions based on the colors of them, or an action at the bottom of the card. Like, green lets you interact with people, yellow lets you move around, I think, and red lets you do physical actions. And then you're moving around on this map, and then there's different walls, and then each one has very different colors and feel, and it all feels very different, like your actual dreams. And I have the Creatures of Ether Fields from the Kickstarter, which are these giant minis, which are super cool for all these monsters you'll face in your dreams. I'm not going to spoil much about them, but I do really enjoy those minis, and they're amazing quality for Awakened Realms. The box weighs like literally so much. There's so many cards you're going to explore and add new things to the different piles around the game board. There's tons of different map locations you're going to go throughout your dreams, and then there's a really big mini in the base box, which is really cool. And then also they implemented stretch goals, which I haven't discovered, but is somehow loosen mode. I wonder how that will turn out. But then the other phase of the game, sorry to jump back to that, but the other phase of the game is you're going to be on the dream board, and you're like moving around this dreamscape trying to find your next dream, collecting keys to unlock portals to your next dream, and you're slowly adding to that. That part's not that enjoyable. It's really the dreams that are the best part, but most of other people have talked about that before too. So pros for Ether Fields: amazing miniature quality and component quality all around. The story is kind of like a pro and a con, so it's like very different than what you normally expect, but I enjoyed that more than I disliked it. The card play is very interesting, but it's not really a mechanics game. It's more story based and what's going on in the world around you that you're trying to discover. Cons are, it's a lot of game. It's not that easy to get through, not mechanics wise, but there's just a lot of content, and they have even more coming out in case that's your thing. And another con, though I can't really count it, so it's like a half con, is it's Kickstarter exclusive, so it's a lot harder to get than Betrayal Legacy or Pandemic Legacy or the next one on my list. So it can be a bit more difficult, but because of that, there's increased component quality, and it's really nice. And I do recommend the miniatures if you can get them. They are enjoyable and super fun to put out on the board. That was my number 3 campaign or legacy game, Ether Fields from Awakened Realms. And number 2, we have the most different, super enjoyable, not game games I think I've ever played, and that's the King's Dilemma from Horrible Guild. I've actually, in fact, played 3, 4, 5, only like 5 or less in areas of this. I haven't played that much, but every play has been so good. How it works is it's like very Game of Thronesy, so, but not like the battles or the wars or anything. It's the actual meat and best part of Game of Thrones. That's the diplomacy and the discussions happening around you. All these counselors advising the king about how to manage the kingdom and what's going on, except you have your own goals and your own ambitions. You might not necessarily care for the well-being of the kingdom, which is the funnest part because how everyone interacts. Like one person might want the kingdom to fall into despair so then the king will abdicate or something, while another person might want the rich to be as powerful as possible, or another person wants everything to be in the middle, or another person wants the citizens to rise up or something. And it's super cool. And you also have these guiding goals on your player sheet, like long-term goals for the game. But that can be a bit of a con because in the game, most people at the beginning, everyone has their unique cast, which you'll take based off its emblem. It's just kind of hard to process and understand what's going on, and people can reveal those early, which you really don't want to do because they're very secret and they're your own goals. But I don't know if that might just be a thing with our group. There's a cool map that comes with the game, and then there's this area at the top of the board, which is another one of the coolest parts and one of the most interesting legacy things. Well, that and another thing. But how you make a decision, like let's say, hypothetically, your kingdom realizes that there's a bunch of dogs or like a bunch of chipmunks, and they're like, what do we do with the chipmunks? Do we send them away, or do we like adopt them or something? And then if you send them away, then like the people might get upset. And then in future games, if there's like a track for each type of influence, and if the people's influence falls too low, they'll blame you and you'll get bad points because of it. But if, like, for example, you adopted it and then the people went up, this is just hypothetical, obviously, then you would get benefits because they're like, oh yeah, your house made that decision, I remember that, which is really cool. And then the other coolest part is the branching pathways. So you have these so many envelopes in the game, which all contain different cards and dilemmas, they're called, the King's Dilemma, ha ha ha. So you'll have only a very small deck at first, but then let's say you'll make a decision about the chipmunks and you'll open an envelope and add like 10 more decisions. And then you'll make a decision about like a bank, and then you'll add 10 decisions about a bank. But it very changes based on your actions, and it feels really cool how that works. And you'll have these storylines around the side of the board, but on your turn. So in the game, you'll pull up a dilemma, you'll read what it says out loud, and then everyone will think about it, discuss, and then vote for what they want. But however, it's not just a straight vote and then that's over. Let's say, for example, it's that chipmunks, and I'm like, oh, I think the chipmunk should stay. So I'll put out some power to vote aye. and the next person puts out a bunch of power to vote nay, and I know I'm not going to be able to beat that. On my turn, I might just choose to pass again and then not actually continue voting for that. But if I think we can win, I could add more to the I and try to work with other people to coerce them, bribe them, anything. And it's so enjoyable doing that. And they're actually difficult decisions. Like, not all of them are very moral. I'm not going to get into most of them, but it's very interesting how it tackles these themes. And you have to think, like, what would the game benefit for, or like how would my characters decide that versus me? And obviously you don't have to be immoral, but they're just tough decisions and important things that the game grapples with and deals with, which I think it works really well at. There's not a lot of components in the game, but it doesn't really need that. The component qualities are standard. There's nothing really extra, but I like the choices for the game. Like, nothing's really extra. I like the house emblems. There's a cool thing in the game where the insert has a hole in it, so then after you make a decision, you drop it in the hole and then it disappears into the bottom of the box, which I think is really cool how they dealt with that. Some of the cons of the game, some of those decisions can be uncomfortable for some people, and I really only recommend it for more than 2 players or 1 player. You can't play 1 player, but I mostly recommend it at 4 or 5 players, or even 6 if you wanted to do a variant, because that's where the most fun and decisions and discussions are going to happen, unlike in some of the earlier games. And it's just so tense, it's so enjoyable, and it might even be, I don't know if it would ever beat the first game on my list, but it's amazing and I really like it. And that was The King's Dilemma from Horrible Games, or Horrible Guild, who absolutely do not make horrible games. And my favorite game of all time, I believe, and my favorite campaign or legacy game, which I went through entirely solo, from Awakened Realms again. This is one of my favorites. Obviously, it's Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. This game is just so good. I could go on it for so long. You have your characters on the map and you're moving around to different locations, exploring this world and making tough, important decisions. It's set into this dark Arthurian world where it's like King Arthur and stuff, but it's like after their prime, and it's dark, and you have to deal with problems that are happening with people, or there's like a sickness spreading, and it's dark, not dark, but it's like it's not light. It's like important. Some of the decisions you'll make are like tough. You're going to be setting free from your home you're trying to protect, to like make important decisions around the world. And as you go through, you're going to be exploring all these cool places, exploring around the world. And the interesting thing is there's like this like mist sort of, which is spreading around, and it's only prevented by these menhir statues out on the board, which push it away. And they're represented by these giant cool minis in the game. But you have to work to maintain those menhirs because they can't just light themselves. That's been a big complaint for like some other people, but like I think at solo it's like really easy to manage those and it still works. But while exploring and going across the map, you're going to be following different storylines, exploring different missions. It's not really sessions, it's like as long as you want it to be. And like you don't really get what your end game is until like you're getting into later chapters of the game. I think there's 13 or 14 for the base game. And it's so cool how you can interact with these different locations. Then you're going to open this big book and explore these different secrets or possibilities and make cool decisions. And like, it's so different what it's going to be all across the world. And I don't want to spoil much of it, but it's just so amazing and super fun. I went through all of it solo. I've just completed the base game, but I want to try the other campaigns. You're managing resources, you have things on your player board which you're going to be spending, like food or magic, and you're going to be gaining those, managing your health. It's so story based and so enjoyable and so wonderful. I can't recommend it enough, I don't believe. And it makes you deal with tough decisions for when you're going or exploring, and my story can be entirely different from yours, and it can be replayed so many times because of that, even though it's a long, super long epic campaign game. And in the end, like, you're dealing with lots of decisions throughout. But like, for example, you set out at the beginning to help save your settlement, but you're going to be interacting with King Arthur or Lancelot, or having decisions where you might have to help like the good of the kingdom versus the good of your settlement, which you started out from. And like, you have to make tough decisions like that, or about how to help people when there's 2 people you want to help, or like one person's like hurt, but would you take advantage of them if it like might save more people or something. And it's just so beautifully written. The world is created so incredibly well. It's a phenomenal game. It's my favorite, and I love it so much. So thank you for watching. This was my top 5 campaign and legacy games of all time. Please subscribe if you enjoyed to help us get there.